What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Thank you so much for taking some time and tuning in today. I will be chatting with Jason Shannon, author, podcaster, construction worker, and a man of many facets. We're going to be talking about his writing, his podcast, and whatever else we can get into with the occasional appearances from his cats. So, without further ado, Jason, how are you?
Mhm. I'm very good, Matt. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course. When you reached out, I was like, of course, I'd like to chat with a new friend. That's kind of what we're about here. Um, for those who may not know you, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
My name is Jason Shannon, and I am the author of 7 books, mostly kind of under the umbrella of science fiction. I have one that's kind of fantasy-esque, and then my newest one is steampunk alt history, which actually is closer to diesel punk, but that is a word that not everyone knows. So steampunk is the one that kind of I put on the marketing.
Right. What is if you know off the top of your head, what is the difference between those two? Because I'm not even sure, honestly.
Basically, it comes down to the time period. So steampunk is mostly meant to be Victorian era,
Right.
and then diesel punk gets up to like end of World War II. And mine takes place in 1948, so it's right on the cusp there.
Yeah.
I actually, as you mentioned, I have a podcast myself, and one of my episodes I had MJ Moore's fellow steampunk author on to kind of discuss this very question. So we
Right.
kind of get into all the details there.
Yeah, I'll have to link that episode because I was curious when you said that when we were texting about it because I'd never heard that term before. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's different. um, when would you say that your love for writing really began? And was there a particular event or book that kind of sparked that for you?
I mean, I've always enjoyed storytelling, and I guess even as a kid, like my favorite cartoon shows, I would, couldn't wait for the following week to find out what happened. So my mind would just play ahead and kind of fill in the gaps myself. In terms of a single event that really set me on my path here, I think I was in ninth grade, give or take, maybe 10th grade. And my family went to the local bookstore in the town I grew up in, which was had a very small science fiction section, which was all I read at the time. And I remember picking a book off the shelf that just from the description on the back, I realized that the first 2 paragraphs had kind of described the first 2/3 of the book. And my attention span being what it was as a 13-year-old, I kind of said to myself, like, well, what's the point of reading this if I first 200 pages have just been spoiled? And I kind of sarcastically said, like, well, I could write a better book than this. And then I thought about it for half a second, like, wait a minute, I could. And I kind of just went from there.
That, to be honest, that kind of reminds me of movie trailers nowadays, where if you watch the trailer, you've basically seen like the best parts of the movie because they want you to be interested, but they're forgetting like, oh, that's a little too much.
Exactly. Yeah, I've really become disillusioned with movie trailers in the past few years.
Yeah, I can't. I try not to watch them just because I know, especially if it's by somebody or someone's in it that I really like, because I know that that might ruin it. Um, or then you sit there and you're waiting for that scene to happen, and it ends up not happening because they're like, "Oh, let's just cut this because we already showed it to everybody."
Yeah, and they're still doing edits, a
Right.
month before release when the trailer's been out for a year.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a weird world. Um, can you tell everybody a bit about Tiger Blues?
Yeah, so Tiger Blues is my newest book. That's the steampunk one. It came out September of last year. This is it here. I actually ran a Kickstarter for it in June, it was a bit of a struggle, but it went well in the end. And then it officially released in September. It, basically, the tagline I use for it is a plucky crew of mercenaries have to keep a doomsday weapon from the Maoists in old history, 1948. And the idea is that I'm taking 2 real life figures, and I'm just pairing them up. In reality, they never met. I put them together as this sort of, again, plucky crew of mercenaries on this sort of last stand, the end of the Chinese Civil War, and they have to track down this sort of Buddhist amulet that they think can brainwash, the Chinese people and try and keep it out of the hands of the Maoists.
Interesting. Did you self-publish this, or did you go through a small traditional press?
This is self-published. All of my stuff is self-published.
Okay, okay. Um, because I know that that varies from person to person on their thoughts and feelings about going with publishers. Because some people just like to have a little bit more control. Um, so I always just like to ask because I don't want to offend anybody if they're like, I hate publishing. Like,
No. I would love to try and get like done traditionally.
right,
The first book I wrote, which has not been released and won't be, I did, go through the snail mail grind year after year, trying to send that out to first publishers who would take it without an agent, and then agents. And, this is before the days of internet submissions. This is, you put it in the post and it would take 8 months to be rejected. And then I kind of fell back onto my sort of fallback novel, which at the time was a novella and wasn't the right length to sort of match publishing standards anyway. So I thought, well, I'll put this out and at least gain a bit of a following. That became my first book, and I kind of haven't gone back since.
right, yeah, and I think it varies from person to person on their preference, especially because like my first one was novella length. It came out to like 33,000 words, but I still published it as a physical book just because they were like, "You want to?" I'm like, "Why not? Like, what could it hurt?" You know. With Tiger Blues, what would you say was your favorite part about writing it? Was it character building, world building? What really struck like this is what I have to focus on the most?
My favorite part was probably how everything kind of came together. And a big part of that is I'm working kind of within the bounds of real history. So the two characters I mentioned, the real life people, maybe I should just name them, Olive Yang and Kawashima Yoshiko, both of whom are fascinating figures, lesser known kind of in the West and in the English speaking world. And I like to read history in general. I did a little bit of research, and I'm like, well, hold on a second. What if I paired them together? What if I did this? And it was a series of like, what if I did this? Oh, that would never work. Think about it for a day. Like, wait a minute. What if I did this? It would work. And then the process repeats. And, the characterization, learning about them, the more I researched, the more I learned about them, the easier or the more fun it was to think about the possibilities as to what I could do to come up with the dialogue, to come up with the narration. It's narrated first person. And then ultimately the theme that kind of ties everything together in the end is a theme I've explored before, but here I was writing in a completely different format, different length, and kind of had to be a bit more succinct with it. And I won't spoil it, but the climactic scene really kind of brings everything together.
Right. Would you say that that kind of did you get more frustrated having to kind of well, I don't know that you necessarily had to, but kind of playing within those lines because it was a real person's life based on mostly factual history?
Not so much because of the two of them. So Kawashima Yoshiko in our world died in 1948. And this book takes place about a month afterwards.
Right.
There were, of course, rumors of a faked execution and the jailers being bribed and what have you. So I'm playing on that, and their slate is completely clean. Like, I don't need to worry about conflicting history or, oh, they need to be back in Beijing to coincide with this event. Like, no, they're out of the picture entirely. So I've got a clean slate with them. And Olive Yang is just so much of their history. They had like a kind of a brief flash in the pan, again, with the English speaking world. My limit is I don't read other languages to be able to go into more depth. But with what I know and what sort of the English sources will say, I've got a lot of field to play on there. It's just a few key events I need to dial in, and some characterization that I was able to play off of as well.
Right. Would you say that there was any sort of pressure to kind of represent them properly, or were you like, okay, no, they may be real names and real people, but this is my story. This is how it's going to go?
So that's an interesting point. So on the one hand, yes, because I very much care about representing history accurately. I don't like historical stories that go way off in the middle of nowhere and have nothing to do with the actual history. I wanted to be as close to history as possible. Also in the fact that both these people may have been trans or genderqueer or non-binary or something sort of under that queer umbrella, which as an outsider, I have to just kind of try and represent accurately and faithfully and respectfully as well. The benefit I had is that both of these people in real life had these sort of larger than life alter egos that partially they constructed themselves and partially the people around them constructed, that made them seem cartoonish, made them seem James Bondian, made them seem just sort of these media magnets. And I was able to work off of that in the more sober analysis of some of their sort of more personal biographies, and then the more sort of cartoonish aspects of other biographies. I can kind of thread the needle there to make them seem more human, but also where the legends come from.
Right. Because for me, I think that would be kind of tricky because I want to represent their history, their heritage, and kind of respect what they did in their time, but also change it enough so that way it's not like, oh, you just pretty much copy and pasted their history from a book to make some money. Would you say you're more of a plotter or a pantser? And has that changed over time for you or kind of stayed the same?
I think it's probably changed over time. I used to be much more of a plotter, not to like the extreme extent you see with some authors where they're like every page or every sub chapter needs to be detailed.
Right.
But I used to have sort of these at least broad stroke chapter outlines. My second novel, The Hounds of Horigin, which is this massive 1,200 page epic, that I kind of need a lot more detail in the initial outline of. Now, I kind of have enough experience where I can just see the broad strokes of the novel overall once I have my idea. Now, the one exception to that is I really do like to have the ending from an early stage to make sure that the novel actually is going somewhere and that it's not going to just kind of peter out and leave me holding a bag that goes nowhere.
I can definitely relate to that because I'm learning myself because my first book I didn't really do any planning. I didn't really do anything. The only thing I really did was like, these are the characters and these are their jobs. Like this is what it is. And I found that it was harder because I couldn't nail down an ending because there was no really place to start. And now I find myself more of, these are the characters, these are the situations, these are bullet points of where I want things to go, and then the ending just makes itself. So kind of a mix.
Yeah, and like overwriting a little bit as well helps. Like you can trim things down afterwards, and maybe it's a little frustrating because you have so much backstory that you couldn't include that is just dead in your file somewhere, but it really does streamline the story for the final product.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I tell people too when they're like, hey, do you have any advice? I'm working on a book. And I always tell them, just write. Like don't even worry about, oh, I have to hit this word goal or I have to stay under this word goal. Your first draft is just basically so you can word vomit and get everything out. And then you pick from that, okay, this should be in there. That character aspect should be in there. This place should stay in there. And then you just kind of pull apart the strings of the things that don't fully line up with the vision that you have. Because you don't want to miss an idea. You don't want to miss something that you're done with a book and you've published it and you're like, man, I wish I would have put that in there. That was really good. Or somebody leaves a review and says, it would have been cool if you did this. And you're like, man, I had that thought no more than 6 months ago. You also yourself, like we said, have a podcast, which is on Spotify, correct?
Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, a few other places, but yes.
Basically, most places you can get your audio podcasts from. What kind of topics do you cover on your show?
So I mostly began the podcast as a way of taking my short stories and my sample chapters and just putting them in a sort of more accessible medium that people are used to, as opposed to downloading like an MP3 off of a website that you're not going to go to without a serious interest in it.
Right.
And then it kind of expanded from there, where in traveling the local circuit, I've met a lot of other self-published or indie authors or small press authors, and I can learn things from them. They can learn things from me. I like chatting about writing, and so I will bring on various guests, and we just kind of talk about what their book is about, their style, their process, editing, tips and tricks, things like that.
Basically, you kind of do the same thing that I do. We provide a place for authors to share their work, their stories, their ideas, and kind of just help them, give them the leg up that we didn't necessarily know or have when we started.
Yeah, exactly. When my first published book was 2013, and self-publishing was really just becoming mainstream back then, and I had to kind of learn a lot of that myself, just on the fly. So if I can offer a helping hand to someone who's just starting out now, then it may save them a year's worth of headaches and querying the wrong places and pursuing the wrong business ventures and what have you.
Exactly, and I think that's key. A lot of people that I've run into, they're like, why would you guys work together, especially if you're writing the same kind of genres or types of stories? Like, won't you steal each other's business? And my answer to that is always no, because we're all small authors. Like, we all want the same thing. We're not writing to get rich. Well, not all of us, anyways. There's some that might be doing it as a job, but most of us just have a really good story or a great imagination, and we think that somebody might get some enjoyment out of an idea that we have, and so we just decide to put it out there, not always exactly knowing, hey, where do I go once I'm done? What editors do I trust? What social media platforms are best for promoting it, and that kind of thing. So I think if as a community we stick together, we can all see a little bit more success in that realm.
Yeah, and like you know yourself, as an author, you might spend a year in like a small room by yourself writing this thing.
Yep.
It can be a fairly lonely thing to pursue. If you actually are in a community of like-minded people and you get to either bounce ideas off of them, or just after the fact be like, what did you enjoy most about writing this, and what did you know that this festival is going on, you should apply there. And these little things really help a lot in sort of the final product.
Exactly. And I see a lot of nowadays. I'm friends with a lot of authors who write within the same genre, and they will host like little writers retreats for their little group. They'll rent a cabin or somewhere, or an Airbnb, and they'll just get together. They'll have a good time. They'll hang out. They'll write. They'll bounce ideas off of each other and kind of read over each other's books and just kind of make each other better while making new friends at the same time, which I think is kind of a cool idea if that's your scene, to go out and hang out with strangers.
Yeah, I mean, it works for some people. So it's
Right.
if that's what they enjoy, they should go ahead and do it.
Right. Um, what would you say some of your hobbies are outside of writing and podcasting?
So I have a full-time job, which does eat up a lot of my time. I really do enjoy reading. Unfortunately, most of my reading these days is done by audiobook, and most of my physical books in the past year or two has been sort of other indie authors, which is really nice to see these stories that are not sort of the mainstream that you might expect if you go to, I guess in your case, like a Barnes and Noble, or my case, an
Right.
Indigo. I used to love to watch TV and movies. I don't get a lot of time for that anymore. I love to travel, although again, I haven't traveled in about the past year or so. Yeah, just general things like that.
Do you, with your job too, do you get a chance to listen to music or stuff while you're at work, so you could put on an audiobook while you're at work?
Uh, Most of the time, yes. So I'll either be listening to podcasts or audiobooks. I'm on a job now where I'm doing kind of basic labor and carpentry.
Right.
The previous job, I was in a backhoe where you kind of need to wear the earmuffs anyway, and I just have the Bluetooth speaker going,
Right.
and no one's talking to you while you're in there. It's just you're doing your thing, and for 5 minutes a day, you get instruction. The rest of the time, you're by yourself.
Right. I've been there. Um, what about your two? Are there only two cats? I know we saw two of them earlier. Are the only two that you have?
Yeah, these are the only two that I have. Brother and sister from the same litter. They're actually born on one of my job sites, and I was the one who went out and bought the sort of live trap because there's dump trucks and whatnot moving around, and they're 3 weeks old. You don't want them to get injured. These two were caught on the same day and they couldn't be separated. So I was the one who wound up adopting them. They're actually named after my books. So I don't know if the camera's going to see this here, but the one sitting on my lap right there, his name is Ibars, which is Mongolian for Moon Panther, named after my third book, The Moon Panther. And the one on the armrest here is named Tumaloon, also a Mongolian name. It comes, pulling my ear thing out. That's an unreleased book called The Battle of Tumaloon Tombs, which is currently on its 8th draft and needs at least one more. That's more than I've ever done before. It's a weird mix of kind of murder mystery, literary, and there's just something quite not right working with it. So I need to retool it one more time.
Right. Yeah, you got to go until you're happy with it. You don't want to half-ass it, as they say.
I'm very much a perfectionist when it comes to my writing.
Right. I noticed a lot of authors nowadays are, though. Like it almost seems like it's something that you have to be, in a sense, like maybe not fully, but in a way you kind of have to be like, okay, it has to be X, Y, and Z, or I'm just gonna tear it all apart and start over again.
Yeah, it's kind of like a vibes thing too, where on paper everything is right. You've got your characters, all the conflicts are resolved, the rising action, all that stuff, and then you read it and it's like something is just not right here. I can't exactly put my finger on it. Maybe if I try this in the next draft, and then it gets a little closer, but it's like something is still not there.
Yeah. Who would you say was your favorite character to write in Tiger Blues?
So honestly, it's probably split between the two of my two main characters, Olive and Yoshiko. There's still like new things that I'm learning about them as I continue to research them in history. I am pursuing writing more in this series, and each of them, like, you think, oh, that's the most interesting thing ever. There's nothing else I could learn that'd be more interesting than that. And then you learn something like, wow, that even fits in more perfectly. And it kind of swivels back and forth, where a few months I'll be writing just completely on Olive. I'm doing a lot of prequels now that are there before they've met. So it's kind of individualized. And I'll do something for Olive for a few months and be completely obsessed with that. And then I move on to Yoshiko and do something with that. And it, both of them I'd say equally are of interest to me.
Yeah, I know there's a few people that I've talked to. They're always like, you're seriously going to make me pick? Like, you're going to make me pick one? Because, most people will jump to and say, oh, it's my main character. But then you've got those people who write the stories and they're like, no. It's like this way far removed side character that I didn't even have a plan for, but I was like, shenanigans. Why not?
I haven't done that here, but I have done that in other books where you have one character show up. There may be this, tertiary character, but they're the one who speaks like the crucial line that really ties the theme together. That's hidden in there kind of covertly. And without them saying that line, like, the book would be completely different. So I sometimes enjoy that character.
Yeah, I think it's fun. Everybody asks me that question for my book, and I'm like, I can't pick one, just because I wrote mine based off of all of mine, including like the places that I grew up and people that I knew. Only names changed, of course, but so I'm like, you're really asking me to pick a favorite among all the favorite people that I used to write the story. I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. I couldn't do it. Here's a really hard one for you. I don't know if you're going to be ready for this one. If you could sit down with any author, living or dead, and talk about their writing and get advice, who would it be and why?
At this point, I would probably say Thomas Pynchon. I discovered him a few years ago. I have not read his entire back catalog, but the few books I've read, even though they're somewhat difficult to get through, they're very rewarding. And his poignancy and his the way he can say so much in one sentence or in one paragraph, it really does kind of astound me that he can do all that. So although I have not read everything he's done, and although he, is getting up there in age and doesn't do personal speaking tours or anything of that nature, I would definitely like to pick his brain.
See, and that's kind of why I love poetry, because people are like, you have to say X amount of words. And I'm like, no, I write haikus. So it's basically 3 lines, and you have to really choose the words that you're going to use to get your point across, because you only get a select amount. So if you can tell a story in that short of time, then you have the bigger ability to paint a much bigger picture in, let's say, a 350-page book or something like that. So yeah, I would have to agree with you that would be a mind that would be worth picking and talking to about future work. Before we end off, do you have any events coming up or any new podcast episodes dropping that you would like to share with everybody?
Yeah, so for events, this isn't 100% confirmed yet, but most likely I'll be at the Oshawa Comic Con March 7th. They're just in the process of rescheduling that for a conflicting event.
Right.
I am confirmed for the Stratford and Cambridge Comic Cons March 29th and 30th, Barrie Comic Con April 11th, Sudbury Comic Con on April 25th, and I might be releasing a new book at that point. Yeah, I can speak more about that in 1 second if you'd like. Huntsville Comic Con May 3rd, Manitoulin Island and Espanola Comic Cons June 13th, 14th, and Flamborough Book Fair July 26th. I do have an events page on my website that people can go and get all the dates and addresses for those.
I was just going to ask that. I was going to ask where's the best place to keep up with you, but it sounds like your website is the place to do just that.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, thank you so much for agreeing to spend some time with me this evening after work and have this chat. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Of course. Have a great day.